Well, there's more evidence today of the devastating impact that the pandemic is having on business and the economy. The retailer Next has warned that sales could drop by 40%. And Barclays Bank has reported a substantial drop in profits and said that the cost of people defaulting on loans could be more than £2 billion. Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, has this assessment.
It is a corporate results season like no other. Grim forecasts for the economy coming to life in the accounts of our biggest companies, such as retailer Next, where store sales plunged 52% over the past 3 months, and the company acknowledged it will be some time before shopping returns to normal. And Barclays, one of the UK's largest banks, announcing a 38% fall in profits and warning the pandemic could cost them over £2 billion in bad loans. Its boss questioning whether after the coronavirus, putting thousands of people in office block headquarters would be a thing of the past.
And then 30 minutes into a call, it's just people yelling at each other.
Despite government subsidies, Lubna and hundreds of other Debenhams workers lost their jobs via a conference call when the already struggling retailer went into administration and had to close some stores.
A lot of people are probably scared because they don't know what's going to happen, and it's very unlikely that a lot of people will be able to immediately apply for a job given the current circumstance. For me, I don't know, it was like, for me, for example, my exams have been cancelled this year, so I'm unsure whether I'm getting into uni or not. So it just seemed like even more bad news for me, because I was thinking in my head, okay, at least I'll have a job.
There certainly is the same anger amongst many British Airways employees after they announced a dramatic decision to cut 12,000 jobs, judging that the crisis would change this industry forever.
We think that there are alternative solutions, and we think that alternative solutions remain on the table. So we can't understand why BA have started the clock ticking on a consultation for a situation that actually, if we get around the table and have a discussion, could be avoided.
Early hopes that the crisis would be a very sharp blip are starting to fade, particularly in the most affected industries. Empty planes and empty runways mean empty passenger terminals, empty shops and restaurants, empty car parks. And for sectors such as travel, companies are now planning on the basis of a pandemic crisis lasting longer than 2 or 3 months. No instant bounce back in the economy, tough decisions having to be made right now. The government is pouring money into the economy to provide a bridge, but some leading companies on the high streets and in the skies already judging that the other side of this crisis will be a very different place indeed. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
The world's biggest economy, the USA, has recorded its worst growth figures in a decade. During the first quarter of this year, gross domestic product, that's the value of all goods and services produced, fell by 4.8%. Now, as a comparison, in the fourth quarter of last year, before the pandemic, GDP increased by 2.1%. Our North America correspondent, Nick Bryant, is in New York with the latest for us.
These figures show what we've already seen with our own eyes, which is the American economy has come to a shuddering halt. And worse is still to come. Some economists believe that the next quarter could see a contraction of 30%, the kind of convulsion that we haven't seen since the 1930s. Now, the Federal Reserve said tonight that it would keep its benchmark interest rate at near zero until the US economy recovers. And governors across America are going to come under heightened pressure to gradually open up the economies. But in cities like New York, that's a risky thing to do.
New York is a city caught between dread and desire. Desperate to open up after 6 weeks in lockdown, but fearful of the fatal consequences of doing so too soon. A New York without New Yorkers has hammered the economy. Its tourism and hospitality sectors have also been decimated. Wall Street, America's financial hub, fears the onset of another Great Depression. But even though the city is past the peak of its outbreak, the density of its population makes it especially hazardous to quickly open up. That COVID conundrum.
I can't even wrap my head around it. It's incredible.
Steve Margarella owns a road building firm in Staten Island, which he fears will be bankrupt by June. He's a Trump supporter who believes the Democrats who run New York are being too cautious.
If I'm not working and this economy is not opened up, and these fearmongers don't back off where they got everybody scared to death, we all go out of business.
Steve, it's a vicious virus. I've had it myself. You accept that?
And I'm sorry to hear that. The reality of it is, people are going to continue to get sick. I don't think they're going to continue to get sick at any alarming rate.
We're seeing more beggars on New York streets. This is Harlem, a mainly African-American community severely hit by this health and economic contagion. And this is upscale Soho, the home of high-end retail, boarded up like a hurricane is about to rip through, which economically it has, every single shutdown day.
Don't open up too soon.
But public health officials such as Danielle Umpod, who live in these communities, warn against the rush to reopen.
People are hurting financially, they're struggling to feed their families, but we really need to take this slow because I would hate for us to have to shut down the economy again if we get more cases.
This is one of the most impatient cities in the world. They talk about the New York Minute. It means right now, immediately, without hesitation. But although some parts of this state could start the gradual process of reopening in mid-May, here in New York City, the tough restrictions will remain in place, certainly for weeks, and maybe for many months.
Every night at 9 o'clock, the Empire State Building is illuminated in a red and white siren light to honor the emergency workers providing care. It's a ritual that will continue until this crisis is over. But that's the unanswerable question. When will New York return to being New York? Nick Bryant, BBC News, New York.